Kia ora koutou. My name is Tuariki Delamere. I'm of Te Whanau, Apanui, Te Whakatohia, Ngāti Wāhiao and Tūhourangi descent. Many of you know that I was a Member of Parliament for the Māori electorate of Waitangi, as well as a Cabinet Minister. What most people don't know is that prior to going to Parliament, I was manager of Crown Treaty negotiations for several years and then led the Whakatohia Treaty claim negotiations from 1994 to 1996. While an agreement was signed in August 96 by the Whakatohia Negotiating Committee, that agreement was ultimately rejected by Whakatohia. And here we are in 2019, 23 years later, with both Te Whanau, Apanui and Whakatohia considering treaty settlement offers from the Crown. I am going to do several videos sharing my views about the treaty negotiation process using the Te Whanau, Apanui and the Whakatohia treaty settlement offers and process as my reference points. I'm not doing this because I oppose the respective negotiating committees. I don't. They have my full support. However, because of my background of institutional knowledge, I believe I have a responsibility to share that knowledge and to give my opinions on what happened, what is happening, what the Crown is proposing, and what I think are some of the things that we should consider. Hopefully these videos will also prove useful to other iwi who are currently negotiating their Treaty of Waitangi claims. In this video I will focus on the indicative settlement offer by the Crown to Te Whanau Apanui. For over 130 years, successive New Zealand governments have peddled the story that we Māori should be grateful for the benevolence resulting from the gift of colonisation. Let me start by defining colonisation. Whether it was Aotearoa, New Zealand, India, Africa, Hong Kong or the Pacific Islands, colonisation was the systematic theft by the coloniser, the British aristocracy, of the resources and assets belonging to the colonised, and the subsequent economic enslavement of the indigenous populations. And for that, we here in Aotearoa, we Māori, we're supposed to be grateful for colonisation. In their document to Te Whanau Apanui, Crown Expectations, the Crown stated they will, quote, negotiate in good faith a settlement of the historical claims of Te Whanau Apanui that is comprehensive, final, durable and fair in the circumstances. Well, this all sounds good. However, what the Crown is really saying that once Te Whanau Apanui and the Crown sign off, then we of Te Whanau Apanui cannot come back sometime in the future and seek to renegotiate this claim. And on the surface that sounds fair and reasonable. However, as the Crown's chief negotiator confirmed to my hapu on 3 June 2019 to Ngāti Paiako ki Te Whanau Apanui, that finality only applies to the Māori treaty claimant. The Crown says finality cannot apply to them, because no current government can legislate away the right of a future government to undo any aspect of any final treaty claim settlement. In their Crown Expectations document, they state any settlement, any signed settlement, will restore the honour of the Crown. Here, right, Andrew Little, Jacinda. Perhaps I should crack up in a tui. Let me sum up for you the reality of what the Crown is really telling us. What the Crown is saying is that if in the future they the coloniser, they the oppressor, they the thief of our resources, of our lands, of our foreshore, of our seabed, a future government has the legal right to undo any part of any agreement that we sign in the very near future. And they're also saying that if in the future the mokopuna, my mokopuna, discover that the Crown today in this process lied and cheated, which by the way is what Māori have learned to expect by successive Pākehā governments for 179 years, then that's just too bad. There will be no redress in the future for any lies our mokopuna discover about today. Before I continue, let me update my analogy about the stolen car that I wrote for the 1994 Te Rere fiscal envelope hui held in the Pōtiki. It was an analogy I used in 1994 in the hope that it would help Mātātua to better understand the reality of the offerings that the Crown was intending to bring to the negotiating table, and hopefully this updated story will make things a bit clearer to those negotiating treaty claims. Anyway, the updated story goes like this. 1928. My grandfather, Waitangi Delamere, stole a pristine, mint condition 1928 Duesenberg. A beautiful car. My grandpa, I'm told, was a man of impeccable taste. Not for him, your common old Model T. Not for my koro, just the best. And in 1994, on Grandpa Waitangi's death, the car passed from Grandpa Waitangi to my father, Tuariki Delamere. It was still in mint condition. And in 1992, that car passed to me on the death of my father. And except for an infestation of cockroaches, the car was still in mint condition. In the year 2000, after my relatives in Waitangi decided I needed saving from the hellhole of the beehive of Parliament, and so they voted me out of Parliament, some nosy Parker researcher discovered that the 1928 Duesenberg had been stolen from Helen Clark's grandfather, and it was in my possession. So Helen was told, and I was duly arrested and charged with receiving stolen property, namely a beautiful mint condition, cockroach-infested 1928 Duesenberg. Because under New Zealand law, stolen property is returned to the rightful owner, the car was taken from my personal car museum and handed over to Helen, as the law considered she was the heir and therefore lawful owner of that beautiful car. But I was lucky because a generous and gracious Helen Clark, happy and thankful to have the car returned to her as the rightful owner, arranged for the charges to be dropped so that I could continue bringing Chinese migrants into New Zealand. Now, that's how things play out when the thief is a Māori and the property stolen is stolen from a Pākehā. That's New Zealand law. Now, let me turn my story around and assess the history of that stolen car according to the rules that the Crown uses to negotiate with us, with Māori, over the property and resources they stole from us, from Māori. In 2000, Helen discovers the family legend of a 1928 Duesenberg car stolen from her grandfather was not only true, it's been found in mint condition, albeit a cockroach-infested mint condition, and in the possession of yours truly, Tuariki Delamere. And so Helen, just like Māori, politely writes to me, the representative of the original thief, and asks for its return. I write back and also, ever so politely, say, this is not possible, because I've fallen in love with it, and being the generous person that I am, not only am I using the car, I occasionally allow members of my wider whānau to use it. But I invite Helen to come on down, have a look at the car, and I even offer her the opportunity to have a ride in it a couple of times a year. Not drive it, I mean, gosh, let her drive it, she might drive away and not bring it back. But giving her a ride was probably a mistake as well, because that's when she discovered the infestation of cockroaches, and unsurprisingly, she wasn't very happy about that. Anyway, I write back to Helen, say that I fully understood the emotional ties she had to the car, but unfortunately I had to tell her it's not possible to return the ownership of the car to her, because I loved it, so did my whānau. But I did invite her to do what she could to help eliminate the cockroaches. Oh my goodness, Helen wasn't happy. She got upset with me. She wrote back saying I was a terrible person, I was nothing but a thief, and it was my moral and ethical duty to hand over the stolen car. But Helen, look, hold on a minute. Me and my whānau, we've been using it for 91 years now. And anyway, we outnumber you. And so no, I ain't giving it back to you. But tell you what, the car doesn't need looking after because it is so special. We need to get rid of the cockroaches. So we need to write a code of conduct on how to care for the car, so that future generations of the Delamere whānau can enjoy using the car in its original mint condition and free of cockroaches. And you can write the chapter on cockroach removal, subject to my veto, of course, because I want to make sure that whatever you write is coherent and what I want it said. But why can't you just return it? Asked Helen. Because, Helen, I have managed to convince my whānau to elect me to our hapu committee. And even better, I persuaded the hapu committee to appoint me as the Ngāti Paiako representative to the Runanga committee for Te Whanau Apanui. I mean, Helen, you need to get real. You need to understand that if you've been a Māori, of course I would have either returned the car or given you full compensation for its value in 2019 dollars. Probably just over US $2 million, I believe. But if I give it to you, a Pākehā, if I give that car back, my Māori whānau, they'll vote me up for my cushy number on the hapu committee and Runanga. Oh well, sadly, I was then woken up by loud banging on my door at 5 o'clock in the morning. In my dreams, I'd forgotten that Helen was now the Prime Minister, and she had sent police around to finalise the negotiations. Of course, what was worse, she had sent to kick in my door the Armed Defenders Squad, led by my Ngāti Wāhiao Tūhourangi Whanaunga Superintendent Warwick Moriru. Warwick took back the car and arranged for me to have 3 meals a day and free accommodation for a couple of years. Okay, well, let's get back to the Whānau Apanui's reality of 2019. In their letter to us, the Crown has acknowledged we still own 89,004 hectares of the 191,185 hectares of land that we originally owned. The other 102,181 hectares is now owned by the Crown. Most of it is called the Conservation Estate. Some of it, a little bit of it, is used for the 2 or 3 schools down the coast. But it was land that was stolen by the Crown from the Whānau Apanui, using various legal machinations to effect the theft. Our stolen land is the stolen car. The thief is the Crown, not Grandpa Waihanga. The victim is the Whānau Apanui, not Helen Clark. The cushy number is being a member of Parliament with attendant salary, not the voluntary hapu committee. The elevated cushy number is being in cabinet with an even bigger salary, negotiating our claims, making decisions about our claims, not the voluntary runanga. And the infestation of the pests that are destroying our forests, pests that were introduced by the thief, not the cockroaches in the car. In their letter to the Whānau Apanui, the Crown says that they, the thief, must be satisfied that negotiators appointed by the hapu of the Whānau Apanui must have the mana to talk to them, the Crown, to talk to the thief who stole our land, who stole our seabed, who stole our foreshore, who marginalised our people for 179 years. I'm not happy that this negotiation, the thief, is saying that they, the Crown, will decide ultimately who has the mandate to represent Māori treaty claimant negotiators. I accept that the Crown needs to be confident that negotiators for the Whānau Apanui have the mandate to represent the Whānau Apanui. However, under no circumstances is it acceptable to me that the thief gets to decide who has the mandate. That decision should and must be made by an independent body. Now, I'm not sure that the Waitangi Tribunal is sufficiently independent when the Crown has set up the Waitangi Tribunal to a point that they are allowed to ignore any findings and recommendations of the Tribunal. Contrary to what the Crown said in its letter, this issue has nothing to do with mana. It's quite simply to do with ownership. The Crown stole the land from us, and we of the Whānau Apanui want our land back with unconditional full ownership, because that's what happens in New Zealand under New Zealand law with recovered stolen property. Well, that's what happens when the recovered stolen property is Pākehā stolen property. However, with our stolen property, property stolen from the Whānau Apanui, the thief tells us, oh no, you can't have that land back. While we acknowledge we stole it, we've fallen in love with it, and we've looked after it. Therefore, it's only fair and right that we get to keep it. And besides, even if it's not fair and right, we are bigger and more powerful than you, so there's nothing you can do about it anyway. And that's how these negotiations between Crown and Māori have proceeded for the last 30 or so years. I invite the Crown to tell the Whānau Apanui in writing and include it as an integral part of the wording of any offer of agreement from the Crown, the reasons why the thief cannot return in full, without condition, our stolen land, which is now called the Conservation Estate, to the rightful owner, Te Whanau Apanui. And by the way, while you're at it, return our stolen seabed and foreshore as well. But let's look at what the Crown has proposed for our stolen land. In the letter, the Crown says that they will, quote, support integrated management of the Raukumara, recognising it is a shared taonga facing significant pest threats, and avoid creating complexity in the management of the Raukumara. Well, isn't that just great? Let's translate. It's like me saying to Helen, sorry about the infestation of cockroaches in the Duesenberg, Helen, but because we both love the car, I will retain ownership of it, because now I have it, I love it, my whānau love it, and I am bigger and more powerful than you, and so you can't take it off me even if you want to. But you can help me get rid of the cockroaches, even though I'm the one who created that infestation. And on the weekend, if you're lucky, you can come down and admire the car through the window of my garage. And I'm sure Helen would have been just thrilled and only too happy to accept my offer. And as we all want to say in Aotearoa, oh yeah, right, crack me up in another tui. But that's a story that the Crown expects us to agree to. And not just the Whanau Apanui, but all Māori treaty claimants. We should be grateful. But the Crown, oh, they big-heartedly offered us the opportunity to co-author with Ngāti Porou a Raukumara chapter in the Conservation Management Strategy with Ngāti Porou and the Crown. A chapter where we will get to assist Ngāti Porou to write a set of management policies and objectives to support the regeneration of the Raukumara. But to ensure that the chapter is written in accordance with whatever the predetermined policies and objectives of the Crown are, the Crown has told us they reserve the right to decide if what we write is coherent. That is, what we write matches what they've already decided. And my response to that is, why should we at the Whanau Apanui and Ngāti Porou bother wasting our time, our resources, time and resources that are done voluntarily, when highly paid Pākehā Crown officers will ultimately make sure that what is written is what the Crown has already decided anyway. Now let's look at the dollars of our, value our loss. In today's dollars, what was the full economic loss to Te Whanau Apanui of 179 years of colonisation by the Crown? Actually, I have no idea. None of us have any idea. The loss of our land, the loss of our moana, the loss of our foreshore and seabed, the loss of our culture, the loss of our reo, the loss of economic opportunity, loss of mana, the demeaning of our people. Who knows how to value that? But it would probably be several billions of dollars over the course of the last 179 years. The quantum of cash settlement offered by the Crown to Te Whanau Apanui is $31 million. It's a lot of money, $31 million. Where is it? Since the year 2000, the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra has received from the government funding of more than $200 million. This year's budget sees funding allocations to the orchestra totaling about $20 million. The single biggest cultural event in New Zealand is Te Matatini, our Māori Kapahaka Championship. They get less than $2 million a year in government funding. When I became a cabinet minister in 1996, I discovered that the Symphony Orchestra and the Royal New Zealand Ballet annually received millions, many millions of dollars of taxpayer funds. I also discovered that the Matatini received absolutely nothing. My approaches to the Minister of Culture and to the Minister of Finance to fund the Matatini were rejected. It's not real culture like the orchestra, like the ballet, thundered Minister of Culture Doug Graham, in telling me in no uncertain terms that he would never support the funding of Kapahaka. Lucky for me, lucky for the Matatini, lucky for Māori, that Prime Minister Jim Bolger took my side and we got the $1 million that I asked for. But it's still a pittance compared to what is given to Pākehā culture, the orchestra, the ballet. And I ask you, how many tourists do you think come to New Zealand to watch the orchestra, to watch the ballet? How many come to watch kapahaka, to watch Māori? What sells New Zealand best overseas to the tourist market? What are we internationally known for? Our orchestra, our ballet, kapahaka, Māori? Think about it. The Crown tells us it is fiscally impossible to compensate Māori the full value of their losses. In our case, according to the thief, the Crown, $31 million is pretty generous, and we should be grateful for that. After all, as the Crown keeps telling us, it's money funded by today's taxpayers, people who are not party to the enforced deprivations of the whānau Apanui by the Crown. But the Crown's not even actually offering us $31 million. In their letter to us regarding the pūtea offered of $31 million, they say that includes everything, including implementation costs. They will all need to fit within this pūtea. That includes, I guess, funding the policies for the regeneration and removal of the pests out of the Raukumara. But what about Pākehā losses? Let's look at how the government reacts to Pākehā economic losses. In 1998, the government paid $268 million to the shareholders for the Equity Corp New Zealand Steel debacle. And a couple of years earlier, the Crown settled with Tainui for $170 million. That for the theft of 887,808 hectares and the killing of hundreds of Tainui by British soldiers. $170 million. That's a pittance compared to their true losses. At today's market value of Waikato farmland, that 887,808 hectares is valued conservatively at over $21 billion. And what about Equity Corp? Oh hell no, we must give those poor Pākehā investors full compensation for their investment losses. Now, no one forced them to invest in Equity Corp. They took a financial and business risk, and they should have had to wear the full cost of that risk. No one forced them to trust that crook Alan Hawkins. And fast forward to 2010. The government bailed out to the tune of $1.6 billion the investors, nearly all of them Pākehā, for the failed South Canterbury finance, dollar for dollar. Oh yes, mustn't allow those poor Pākehā investors to lose any money, even if they knowingly and deliberately invested in South Canterbury finance. No one forced them to trust Alan Hubbard. But what about Māori losses? Losses that resulted from theft by the Crown. Who gives a toss? We at the whānau Apanui should be grateful for even $31 million after implementation costs. Now, concluding today's session, I do want to tell you what my loss has been, my personal loss. My father started to learn English at the age of 7 years old when he started school at Whangaparaoa at Cape Runaway. Because of what was in reality the spiritual terror wrought on my father's generation, I grew up without te reo, without Māori culture, without Māori tikanga, without Māori kapahaka, without Māori anything. And after being subjected to whatever the mental tortures that were wrought on those Māori students in the 1920s and 1930s, my father, he never taught me or my brothers anything about our reo, our culture, our tikanga. However, today, I feel I am blessed and lucky. My mokopuna are all te reo speakers. They are immersed in our language, our culture, and so, notwithstanding my gripes of this video, things, they are on the improve compared to what I went through in school. Nō reira, ngā mahinu ki a koutou a ka whanaunga o te whānau Apanui o te whakatohe o ngā tiwai o me tūhaurangi, me ngā waka, me ngā iwi katoa o te motu. Ka nui te ko o taku ngā kau ki te ia koutou, a tēnā tātou katoa. I will have another video on what I think the Crown should be offering us as part of our settlement. I will post the time for that in a couple of days' time. Kia ora mai tātou.